Okay, thank you. Change the agenda from the health scrutiny county to the ones we're looking at for the district. So, hey, it's a bit dark here, you know. I'll have to change something here. Anyway, welcome everybody to the committee, your scrutiny committee. It's not a long agenda, but I've said to members earlier, I've given up predicting when the meeting will end, so I'm not predicting anything here. But it is a short agenda. We'll see. The leader of the council asked if he could move, asked if we would move an agenda item number 5 on the compliments, complaints, and so on report up to just after the minutes, and happy to do that. May not be able to get it a little bit later, so it may do health matters first. Welcome to the meeting. As I say, apologies for absence. We've had 3. Shall I read them out? Councillor Yates, Councillor Warfield, and Councillor Marshall. Apologies this evening. Yeah. Declaration of interest. Anybody got any declaration of interest? No. Okay. And then there's the minutes of the previous meeting. Major issues with that. Basically, we just agree those.
Chair.
Please, yeah.
There was the one point I raised at full council on the minutes. But at 24, there was a part missing about. There's a question raised about asset transfer.
Yeah.
Which isn't captured in the minutes.
Yeah, but they're captured in the minutes of full. Well, hopefully they'll be captured in the minutes of full council, so therefore they are captured. Yeah, it will. Okay. Yeah.
It would be better if it was an accurate reflection of that meeting, though.
Yeah. Well, I would say not if you're correct. If you're correct, as will be seen by the minutes of the next full council meeting. I mean, if the monitoring officer wants to come in and argue with me, that's okay. But I think that's okay. That's the way to do it, isn't it?
It will be mentioned.
Maybe contradict me.
Yeah, I would say it is in order for this meeting to correct the record.
Okay. Well, we can make note of that then. Yeah. We've got 2 goes there. Even though I followed it up.
Much obliged.
Okay. Minute 24. Got that anyway here. So thank you. She got her earphones on, headphones on. She didn't hear your success there. Got to watch the record.
A rare success.
Well, the next item is health matters. Mine's only a brief report. There's 2 pages, although added to that. It looks worse when it's been added to, but basically I've just included 2 health watch reports which explain, I think, 24-25, the report, but explains what the situation is with ambulances and the problem we've all heard some before the meeting, and I've had experience of it where ambulances don't turn up, could be hours, in the end you're asked to go there. The main issue with the problem with the ambulances, it was made clear to us that meeting and in these other reports, is that it's actually taken the patients off the ambulances into the hospital. If the hospital can't take the patients, then the ambulances have to stay there with the help they're getting in the ambulance, and of course they're stuck there. So if you've got 3, 4, 5 ambulances that should be out on the road, it's not surprising then they can't send them to emergencies. Category, they are getting on to the figures, category 1, category 2. The standard response rates are in the health watch report, as you look at that, and the local one by comparison. But the issue, plain and simple, was actually the capacity, or rather the efficiency, I would say, of hospitals. This is what the argument was with the NHS. That's why you got the big reviews. If you're on universal credit, I understand that you get a letter saying you've got a meeting. And then you get a text to remind you that you've had a letter to say you've got this meeting. But if you have a hospital appointment, you get a letter eventually, and that's it. I mean, that should be enough. But you don't get any follow-up texts. My particular GP surgery, I get so many texts. Sometimes I get confused about whether I have got an appointment or not. But at least you get the text, and that's it. So there's a lot of things. That's just a simple example from my point of view. But there's a lot of examples where hospitals are failing to be more efficient, and this is what it's all about, and actually be able to take those patients in from the ambulances into hospital and get them the correct treatment. There's a lot of stories on that in the health watch report. There are one of the reports there, there's lots of stories as well from members of the public with similar problems there. But we're able to grill the ambulance people. As I made it clear, they're separate from the NHS aspect of hospitals and that. So if you've got any questions or anything, I'll follow them for you, unless they're really technical ones. My vice chair might have. Yeah, yes, please, Leona.
It's a really quick comment because I remember like the meeting from last year. It
Yeah.
sounds exactly the same as last year, where they have queues and people with hospital. I mean, are the county councils, are they pushing for this change? Because year, and I remember the year before the meetings is also the same, and it's pretty much the outcome of the meeting was the same as well, where they have the issues of the ambulances, the queues, and leaving the hospital inside.
Well, they were very in defensive of the ambulances and what they've been able to do. So, mate, I'm making quite simple, really, which is at the other end is they can't actually get the patients off the ambulances. It's as simple as that. So they've done, I think they believe they've done what they can, and we certainly ask lots of questions. But it is the other end, the NHS, and they've got the ICB we had also there, but that was for another thing. We'll have them again next month, and be asking the same sort of questions about the efficiencies, savings that they have to make by being more efficient. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you can watch the recording, and if you don't think I was nasty enough, I'm happy to be nasty next time.
Where they can't send an ambulance, do they have sufficient paramedics to be able to go out and to see the people that are actually out there that are in need of help?
Well, I'll have to get back to you on that one, really, since it wasn't my report, obviously. But I understand that wasn't an issue for the ambulance service. But I mean, some people need to be in hospital. Some people don't need to be in hospital. They do try different ways of making sure that that's the case. So you can distinguish between those that need to be taken back to hospital and those that can be dealt with at home. It's the same with the NHS. I'm talking about virtual wards now. When people are treated at home, it seems to be more efficient in a lot of ways than others. So there's a lot going on, but I didn't get that as an issue that was raised. Sorry, that came up rather.
It's just the fact that if they can't get into the hospital because the ambulances are tied up, there's probably still people who are priority 1 people who are still out.
Priority 1, they definitely priority 1. It's priority 2, which is the big one.
Okay.
There's quite a wide range of things. There's a visit going to be to the there was a report in 2023 that before my time that they did on this, but this county council scrutiny committee did, but there's also an opportunity to visit the control room sometime very soon. So I'll get back to you on specifics on that. I'll find a bit more about that for you. When I had my heart attack, the paramedics were brilliant. They were there. You know. Any other difficult questions for the chair, who is not medically qualified?
Just, it's a national challenge, but just here locally, the more that we can improve the primary care in our district, then it relieves the patient of people having to go to hospital. So we're talking the GP surgery, and we're talking about the Samuel Johnson Hospital, so that the services that are provided locally are better, more extensive, and then it prevents people having to go to hospital. We should lobby for locally, which I know.
I understand is the plan. This holistic looking approach. The prevention is always better than cure. I mean, I heard that 30 years ago, but the smoking cessation and other help that's available is making a difference, but it's still not enough. So yeah, sorry, Leona. Yeah.
Just leads to my next question for the work programme. So in January, where it's about primary care and obesity, I remember in the county, they were looking to get localized data.
Yes, that's
yes. I mentioned that before. So
yes.
are you able to report local data of literal districts for primary care obesity? That'd be really helpful.
I'll make sure. I'll email tomorrow to Zach to the officers. Yeah. Remember you raising that issue. Okay, anything I can ask questions on diet, but I'm not very good at the medical stuff. No, okay, I don't. Thank you for that then. Now the leader isn't behind me, is he?
I'm told he's just dialing in now, Chair.
Dialing in? Oh, blimey, that takes me back a bit. So just waiting for the leader to come onto the system.
Waiting for him to accept the invite.
The next report is compliments, complaints and MP inquiries 2024 to 2025. Obviously comments are helpful. I mean, I've got figures going back till 2022, 21, 22 here. There's not any great changes that I can see. I can't see any patterns or that are significant, but others might be better than I am at detecting those sort of things. I think the issue is about stage 1 complaints that are upheld or others. The one that interests me are the stage 2 complaints that are not upheld, and they're not upheld because in some cases because there's no problem there. That's the policy of the council. And I was wondering then if the policy of the council isn't correct, we can in theory deciding the policy of the council, whether we ought to be alerted to that and see if there's a way, if we ought to be relooking at or looking again at the policy that's raised complaints. There might be one we can't do, but I think that would be an issue there. Any friend?
I think that might be.
Okay. Well, we'll start anyway. I'm not going to keep waiting. So, any questions first of all? I mean, we're going to wait for the presentation, but anything urgent yet on the complaints? Compliments? Council and Council. Oh, yeah, okay. Council first, yeah.
But just with regards to complaints, with the increasing use of AI to answer calls and address calls and whatever else, are we just going to see complaints increasing? Because it's very frustrating when you can't get through, you can't speak to somebody, and what you do is you end up putting the phone down in exasperation. So do you think they'll increase?
Yeah.
With more use of AI by councils and other people?
Yeah, that's the question, Albert. I did have a follow up with some question. Well, it's an FOI, it's actually at the county council some time ago, and I wouldn't say it was gibberish, but it's clearly I thought this is an AI answer. It clearly hasn't read my email properly, and I did ask them that. And just no issue. I just wondered, is this an early AI answer? And the answer was yes. It was AI. And you could see that, and that's where you can get some sort of problems. So that's that balance between. Well, the use of AI, I even heard on the radio today, there'll always be mistakes in that. And we've got AI now on our search on the website, the Liverpool District Council website, is asking you a question. And it has worked, I think, so far. When I put stuff in, it's not come out with anything daft, and I've still got the answers quickly, which I used to get before. So, and is the lid here yet? Or
We're just forwarding this link to him now so that he can accept it.
It's quite, your point, John, is that you could just put into AI, write me a letter to my, is this your point? Write me a letter to my council because my bins haven't been collected this week, and it will just produce it. So it just makes it very easy for people. Is that what you're
saying? No, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking of things like phone responses or the response that people get to the questions that are raised.
Right.
I've run places up, and I know that it's not a real person's voice, it's an AI. And they don't understand the question, so I usually talk gibberish because then it forces them to get somebody.
Okay, right.
The mark wants to come in yet, or too risky to come in so early? Yeah, I thought so.
The leader's thunder, but I'm happy to come forward.
Well, questions, I know to them, so don't worry. Councillor Ball and then Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, well, I think having complaints is not a bad thing, because complaints, I always said, was an opportunity to learn, and we can improve our services through complaints. So I'd be encouraging complaints rather than trying to suppress them. But what I'm curious about is almost not quite a doubling of stage 1 complaints upheld compared to the previous year, which I'd like a bit of chat around that, please. And I'm pleased that we're continuing to have stage 2 complaints, because I found out from Lizzie Barton on Friday that Blanford Housing stopped people making stage 2 complaints, which means, I'm dealing with that separately outside of this meeting. But I'm pleased that we do that, because I think it's important that stage one, they're not upheld, people have got the opportunity to move it to stage two so that more senior staff in the organisation can understand them. And I think if there is a systemic problem because of that, then I think Councillor Norm is absolutely right. We need to be looking at perhaps policy changes to make it possible to help people get things upheld.
I understand the leader's here, so I'm going to ask him to come in, Councillor Pullen. I've got a couple of questions ready for after you finish your introduction, if that's what you are wanting to do, and then we'll move on from there. So can you hear me okay, Doug?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Appreciate that. And apologies, I'll keep mine short and sweet because I'm joining from a very noisy Euston station. But look, I suppose as Councillor Bawley's just said, we shouldn't be scared of complaints. We should welcome them. Obviously, the trajectory is concerning in terms of that. But actually, I think we should think about the absolute numbers of complaints is still very, very low. So we should take the feedback, learn from it, and if there's areas that we need to go and do a deeper dive into, then we can absolutely do that. More than happy to take questions that you have on the specific complaints or on the specific to the paper.
Okay. Well, the first question that Councillor Hill was asking about AI and the use of AI in dealing with issues, complaints, so on. Is that, I think what Councillor Hill was asking, whether that's going to get worse later on because you can get gibberish sometimes and not understanding. So if you like say something about the use of AI in dealing with complaints, if we are using AI to deal with complaints.
I'm not sure that we use AI to deal with complaints themselves. Obviously, we use AI more and more frequently in terms of dealing with customer inquiries, which is the way of the world at the moment. Obviously, we want to be able to triage initial inquiries. We want to be able to provide as much information as we can to our residents as quickly as we possibly can. The benefit of AI is that it actually frees up real human beings to deal with the more complex cases. And I think the more we can drive towards that, the better. Clearly, where there are complex cases, people should exit that sort of AI feedback loop as quick as possible and get to a real human being. And if that is not our council's experience, then we should highlight that and point them out to our digital team.
Okay, did you want to follow up on that?
No, I just think that we're using AI more and more, and I think the key thing is I fully appreciate the fact that you say you can then deal with the more important cases, but those important cases have got to be found out in the first place. So it starts off as a general inquiry or approach to the council, and they still have to navigate their way. And how do they determine, how does AI or whatever it does determine whether it's important enough to go to a human being?
Right, it's in the initial stages, yeah. Doug, can you respond to that if you heard that okay?
So that's a process of refinement. I think the reality is that the AI frequently can't. We can deal with simple queries, but the resident feedback should always provide an option for them to speak to a real human being. And whatever our AI implementation is, it will always offer a route for them to speak to somebody. So if they feel that their query hasn't been dealt with appropriately, then there's always an exit out of that AI loop to a real human being. And again, I'd say, if that's not our residents' experience, then flag that, because actually that's nearly the case.
Okay.
Can I just respond to that, if I may? It's not so much about what's happening now, it's the fact that, is it going to be used more and more? That, I appreciate what you're saying, but the trend seems to be that it's being used more and more. And are you in a position to guard against that happening as you go forward, to prevent people becoming?
So I think naturally it'll be used more and more, and as AI becomes smarter and smarter, we will use it more and more because it will be able to deal with greater variety of resident inquiries. But I suppose, as I say, as we work our way up that chain of ever increasing complexity, there will always be a route for a resident to speak to a real life human being, regardless of the complexity of that. So I don't think we should be worried about it being used more and more. What we do need to make sure is that residents can always speak to a human should they so wish.
Thank you.
Just remember that not all human beings are efficient though, John. I mean, some human beings aren't as good as AI, you know, not here, but elsewhere. Colin Ball asked a question, but I'll bring him in, but it was about the stage 2 complaints upheld, I think.
Stage 1 complaint.
Stage 1 complaints upheld.
Almost doubled from last year.
Well, I've got the figures for stage 1 complaints upheld. Where? Yeah, got them. Right. In 21-22 it was 14. 22-23 it was 22, and you saw 33 last year, and then 59 now. So that's what Colin's concern, Doug.
Yeah,
Could you,
I mean, I suppose if
well,
I
let him respond to that, and then I'll.
if I could amplify, it might help the response.
You
If I
want
can, because that's clearly an upward trend.
Yeah.
But when you look at the ombudsman response, we've had very few complaints actually go and push through the ombudsman. So that suggests we're generally doing okay. But that increasing response of stage 1 complaints upheld is a concern, and I wonder what we can do to try to mitigate that. Do we need to change some of our policies perhaps to make sure that those that come through as complaints or whatever? But it just seems odd that there's a rising trend, but clearly we seem to be doing a reasonable job overall.
And I think that's a really good point. And for you, Chair, I suppose there's two options, 2 routes there. We can either look at how we can reduce stage 1 complaints being upheld and come up with a process that minimises the actual upheld complaints, or we can go and look at the root causes of that and really address those issues. So I don't think we should come up with an artificial way of reducing those stage 1 complaints. That would be totally the wrong way of approaching it. We should welcome the fact that feedback's been given. I think we should welcome the fact that we are an incredibly transparent council. Well, I think if you look at our peers up and down the country, we actually are very, very transparent, perhaps sometimes to our own detriment. But actually that reinforces confidence overall in our council. And we should welcome complaints. We should be very transparent about how we're dealing with those complaints, transparent about the actions that we take off the back of that. I think clearly, and perhaps this is something this committee would like to look into, are there areas where perhaps complaints are a little bit higher than we'd otherwise like? And I think, service is one of those areas. Well, let's uncover what it is exactly that's driving those complaints and see if there are operational issues that we can start addressing, and if there's additional resource or change in process in those areas, then let's start looking at that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think pretty much on the same page, because I think the point I was trying to make is that if we've got an increasing trend in stage 1 complaints, it's not about suppressing those, it's encouraging them, but can we then look into why those complaints are being made, which I think is what you said, so that we stop them happening in the first place, because we get right what it is people are complaining about earlier on.
Yeah, I think we're in violent agreement. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I've got Councillor Anne Hughes, then Councillor Ross Bragger, and then.
Yeah, I mean, I had two points going on from that. I thought actually the fact that a relatively high proportion were upheld is good in some ways, because it suggests people are making genuine, not frivolous complaints. But the numbers, apart from joint waste, the numbers on page 6 are actually very small. And but what we don't have there, which I'm just interested in, because I've spent some time on elections and on planning this year, which are both 5 complaints upheld. I just wondered what proportion are there any particular differences in the proportion upheld in different areas of the service? I mean, the numbers are so small, I don't suppose it, but are there 5 out of 15 or 5 out of 6, you know, that are upheld?
In council reviews, I think that's part of the challenge actually, that when we're working with such small numbers, it's really difficult to start reading too much into the figures because we're working with such small numbers. There might be an officer in the room who can give you some more detail on that, but for me personally, the numbers we're working with are so small that a doubling from 2 to 4 in one particular year is really difficult to read too much into.
Can I just also say,
Please.
the thing one would really like to know, and again, the number is a sort of benchmarking thing, but as the report says, I think that there's no easy way of, you know, there's no system-wide sharing of information that would enable us to do that, to see how we compare to Woking or wherever. So no, thank you.
Didn't work.
Yeah, we're probably are better. Okay, and we're better than I don't know. IP.
Councillors are available to be counted. Councillor Rusbragger, please.
Yeah, if I can just really following on from what Colin was saying, you know, these complaints to upheld are and as you've said, Doug, a learning opportunity, and clearly it can be in that team or for that officer. It can be there's feedback and it can be a learning opportunity. But are these recorded, the type of things that are upheld, so that the learning can go across the council, not just in the area where the complaint was made?
Yeah, and I think that's probably a question for our head of paid service who's in the room with you this evening, who might be able to give a bit more detail on. But I'm a massive fan of ensuring that learnings are shared, that people understand where things can go wrong, and also understand the standards that are expected of us, because, you know, I think particularly for district councils, we are a very, very broad organisation that has lots and lots of different departments, but perhaps very few people in each department. So it's even more important that we share those learnings cross-departmentally to make sure that we're making the most out of that. I know Simon is in the room, and Simon, if there's anything you want to add in particular to how those learnings are shared cross-departmentally.
Yeah, certainly, Chair, if I may, through you. So firstly, as members have already talked about tonight, I think we need to put this into context. So, for example, I think we had 34 complaints in waste last year, 23 of which were upheld, but we collected nearly 9 million bins last year as well. So in terms of the proportion of the impact on the service overall, I suppose these complaints are important. Second point I'd like to make, Chair, before I answer the leader's question is, I think it's fantastic that it's easier for residents to complain now, and we've made it far easier. The consequence of that is that the volume of complaints is trending upwards, as we've seen. But equally, we've had a learning journey already in the organisation over the last couple of years, because I genuinely think it's fair to say that a number of those complaints, those types of complaints that we might have received in previous years, we wouldn't have upheld partially or wholly, we would have dismissed. So the fact that the organisation is upholding them is holding ourselves to account and is helping us to learn. And then the last point, directly to the question, Chair, is that leadership team sees this report on a regular basis. And so we are absolutely, as a group, making sure that learnings are shared across the organisation. All of the stage 2 complaints come through me in my office. So I absolutely know exactly what the major concerns are that are going on in the organisation. And then that's what you pay me for, to make sure that when I know about a problem, everybody else knows about it as well, I promise.
And you promise you don't go on chat, you know, to get it up? No. Right, I think Councillor Hughes then, if that's okay. Oh, no, beg your pardon, no. That's Mark Brent now, just on my list here, sorry.
Thank you. It was on the same theme about the number of upheld complaints. And it struck me that it was more I took the point that the numbers are very small, and that's a well-made point, I think. But it was the fact for me that as a percentage of the number of complaints we received, it'd gone over half of all complaints received. So it gone up as a percentage. I suppose my question is that a percentage that will be monitored? Is it is it a KPI for the council to each year to make sure we keep a handle on how many are upheld as a percentage of those that are received?
Chief Executive or leader? Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose perhaps I'd invite Simon to answer on that. But my view would be it'd be the problem with statistics is that they're very easily manipulated, and if we had a KPI based around number of complaints received, it'd be very easy for people to play the game of making sure that complaints were not that they weren't appearing to be too high and were minimised. I'd much rather have an absolute clear and transparent process and not incentivise anybody to play down those complaints. Make sure that they're accepted, make sure they're reported, make sure that nobody's incentivised to reduce the amount of complaints per se. But obviously across the organisation, everything we do should be focused on making sure that we always deliver the best possible service to all of our residents. I think having a KPI specifically around complaints might actually lead to some sort of perverse incentives that wouldn't actually assist us or our residents.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Chair. Just to 100% agree with the leader of the council. As I said previously, I think in previous years, some of the complaints that we are seeing today would have been dismissed.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have taken them seriously. So if 100% of those complaints that we receive need to be upheld, so be it, so that we can learn. So I 100% agree with the leader.
I suppose for me it's about monitoring rather than saying it will be good or a good or bad outcome. If the number goes up or down, it's about making sure that it's monitored every year. And in fact, can I just say the only other point I had was on the theme of sharing that knowledge then. I thought 3.9 where it talks about in the report where it talks about how quarterly being fed into performance review. I thought that was extremely positive, that it isn't just the numbers we look at once a year. We have to actually an ongoing thing that's fed into to performance meetings. So I thought that was a really positive step.
Is that a compliment?
Yes. So I'd like to
compliment. Make sure we record that. That's 100. Might take us up to 100. I think, and Councillor Chandler, I firmly believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I think that the more transparent we are, the easier we make it for us to be transparent. Absolutely, it's uncomfortable. Absolutely, it leads to some awkward conversations. Absolutely, it leads to some sort of uncomfortable overview and scrutiny committee meetings. But genuinely believe that the more we can shine, on areas across the organisation and make it easy for us to be transparent and learn from where we might have failed, ultimately that leads to better outcomes for our residents, whilst equally it may be uncomfortable for the cabinet and the leadership team. That's just the price of attempting to improve the organisation. You can see my personal view.
Thank you. Colin Ball's got another question on how you'll fix the time.
Well, it's a compliment, in fact, as we're in the mind of making compliments. It's very pleasing to see that we've improved our responses to MP questions raised from 81% to 92%. And I hesitate to say this next point because that might backfire on me. But I'm assuming that's in the context of an increased number of MP complaints from our previous MP's position, but perhaps not.
MP inquiries, Councillor Ball, inquiries, not complaints.
Well, you correct me correctly, but yeah, my point still stands.
In my role as scrutiny chair, I have to point out in 21-22, it was 72% in 20 days. In 22-23, it was 94%. And as you see, 23-24, it was 81%. Because these always ask the question, what were the nature of the questions? Are they questions worth, they could have been resolved or you just pass them on to the council? All sorts of, have you worked for an MP? I know how it works. That's hell, yes. But
I don't think it's really about the number of complaints. I think it's about how well they were handled.
Yeah.
When you think that Marks and Spencer's built their reputation on complaints by the fact that they dealt with them properly.
Right.
Just a comment.
There's a man who's returned many a Christmas sweater to Marks and Spencer's.
Is it Mr. Marks and Mr. Spencer's buried in Whittington? One of them.
Spencer Hall, isn't it?
Spencer. Sorry, Leon, Vice Chair.
Ask about conflict, because we said that we like to hear about complaints. Do we also emphasize on compliments? It's always really important to know what's in detail, what we're doing well, and what this this team. But is there more just the saying thank you for compliments? Like, what is it? Anything particular in each department that
What we're particularly good at, I think, is the
do you emphasize on that as well?
Anything stand out to anybody?
Very good at everything.
Well, I think my view on that, it's difficult because we have, no doubt we'll have more compliments and more complaints about our universal services such as bin collection than perhaps we would about some of our sort of more niche services, shall we say. But you're right, absolutely, Councillor Lund, that we should absolutely, just as we want to go and learn from where we've failed, we want to celebrate our successes, and particularly where there are individuals within the organisation who are going above and beyond. And I know Simon does this through his weekly message to all staff. We celebrate successes, talk about the sorts of culture and behaviour that we should celebrate and we think is right, and to help share that culture far and wide across our organisation.
Okay. And did you say you're at Euston Station, did you say?
I am. Is that a loaded question?
Well, it is, because could you complain about the missing portico that they used to have? That's a sad. That was a sad thing. But if you just put that in some complaints ballot box, what they've got there, that would be helpful.
I'll stick it on the list.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your time. I appreciate you struggling with that, leader. So thank you, Doug. Thank you, everybody. Right, okay.
Thank you all.
You go, as they say. I just heard your train leaving, by the way. Oh, give me sunglasses from the. No, it's right. Right, thank you, everybody. Compliance report. Yeah. So the next item, I'm reluctant to introduce this because we're all saying how good it is, really, but I've got to introduce it. So this is the planning performance update, and I presume we'll give it up now, haven't we? That for the complaint. Did you? And the recommendation is simply that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee to note, but also to provide any comments when necessary. One or two questions on this, but yes, if you could introduce the item, one of you. Yeah, Artemis, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an update from the previous report that you saw. I think it was back in May.
Yes.
I think you wanted an update on the planning focus trials and how that has gone. So as you know, we started that in February to sort of test the waters to see how far we could push and improve on our stats and how we sort of run some of the things that we do. And that has gone very well. We ran it for just over 6 months and it ended on the 31st of October. As you can see from the report, we've continued to succeed where we wanted, particularly around our household planning applications that affects most of our residents in the district. And I can report that we have consistently been determining household applications in time within the statutory 8-week period. And in fact, as a result of the trials and the testing that we've done, I can report that at the end of October, which is a slight update to the report at the time that it was written, 63% of those applications were done within 4 to 5 weeks. 37% were done within 4 to 5 weeks, and 63% of those were determined within 6 weeks. And similarly with minor planning applications, again, as a quick update, now that we're at the end of that October timeframe, 38% of those minor applications were done within 6 weeks, and 19% of those were determined within 4 to 5 weeks. So we have consistently been improving on that and getting applications turned around a lot quicker. And again, with our major planning applications that didn't form part of the trial, we are consistently overachieving in terms of the national standard that's set by government in terms of those KPIs returned. So that's that. So in terms of the end of the trial, just very quickly, so now we have gone back to normal, so we don't have the Tuesday focus day. We are instilling this as part of the norm every day. So we are still trying to push to determine applications quickly. We are continuing to not notify neighbours by letter on a regular basis. We're taking it on a case-by-case basis to notify neighbours by letter where we feel that is necessary. But we are continuing in terms of posting more site notices, advertising planning applications across the district, which has been very effective and actually is reaching more people and giving more people the opportunity to comment on planning applications. And I think you wanted an update on appeals from the last 6 months. So I can tell you we've had 20 decisions in the last 6 months. 13 of those were dismissed and 7 appeals were allowed, which accounts for approximately a third. Most of those are in the minor applications category. Of those allowed, 2 appeals that you will know about were awarded costs against us, one of those being Horner Avenue, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. But as part of negotiations with the developer, I have been successful to get them to waive those costs for the council, which could have been quite a considerable sum. I think we estimated over £100,000 at one point last week. I think in terms of the trend with the amount of appeals that are being allowed, there is a national trend at the moment where more appeals are being allowed. I think that goes in line with the government's steer of being more permissive and increasing developments happening. So that is part of that trend. We are not unique in that, and we are not unique in terms of our stance at the moment with our local plan and our 5-year housing land supply. So all of those things kind of overlap each other in terms of what the trends that are happening with decisions that are coming forward. And in terms of LWM planning, that's going from strength to strength in its 2nd year of operating. I think in the last report, I said that we had been shortlisted for the regional West Midlands Royal Town Planning Institute Awards. I can report that we won that. Small consultancy. I put it in bold just to show everyone. But not only that, because we won that, we are now through to the nationals. We are in the finals for the nationals. That is happening next Thursday. So yeah, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I just mentioned on the appeals, the Horner Avenue one. I did watch with some anxiety when I saw the planning committee discussing that. I mean, I thought the inspector's going to come down hard on this. I know you've done some work there with the developer, and it's in the developer's interest to work with us, and you've done an excellent job there as far as I can see. I did contact you and you were hoping that would be the case. You've been successful there, but I mean, there still needs to be some training, I think, from I'm saying this as an observer of those reports. There still needs to be some training of planning committee members when there's a possible effect of £100,000 cost to us like that. When for me that was a black and white case, even though I can understand why members voted the way they did, and it just seemed astonishing. I've only driven down that particular road on Google, but I can see the issues there. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, the £1,000 could have been. I mean, it comes to James, there needs to be more training.
Yeah, I mean, noted. I mean, we do hold regular member training sessions with planning committee, and we often ask for whatever particular topics that they'd like us to cover. I think it's very difficult. There is a very fine balance, I think, because you cannot take the potential appeal or a potential cost that might be awarded against the council when members of a committee make a decision. It's not a material planning consideration, and I think it might be the wrong direction to go down if you think, well, I'm not going to make that decision because we might not win on we might lose costs. But it is something, it is a factor, but it's not a material planning consideration. But, you know, we do work as closely as we can with our committee members to keep them informed and updated on latest planning legislation and trends.
I'd argue that if it's the proper planning consideration from the advice from officers, and if members go against that completely, then that is a planning consideration. But following the effect of costs is another matter, but
yeah,
that's the issue.
Well, I mean,
I'm expressing a personal view here, not.
Sure.
And I'm not on the difficult role of being on the planning committee. I made that decision.
Well, I mean,
years ago.
I think that's the whole point of having members on committees, because they approach planning decisions from a different perspective. You know, they're representing their wards, their parishes, local residents. So, you know, it's very rare, I have to say, in the last couple of almost 3 years that I've been at Lichfield, we've had very few applications overturned by the planning committee. So it isn't the norm. There are authorities where it is the norm. So I think it does show that there is a level of trust in what we put in front of members, recommendations that we make. But sometimes, you know,
I can understand it from the other point of view, but I just see what was.
Yeah.
Great success on the minor application. I think Councillor Hughes might have a question about the major one.
Well, I hesitate to say anything, Chair, after, you know, your denunciation of us on the planning committee. There, that was one of the periods where I wasn't on it. I think it is very difficult because we're told, although the little spiel at the start, that planning is not an exact science, and then we're told, you know, that terrible things will happen if we disagree with the officers. But the only thing I wanted to say, I think obviously it's doing really well, but I wonder about speed of in major applications, whether speed, if you want a porch on your house, clearly there's no problem with doing that quickly. But it is the case that the last 2 or 3 meetings of planning, we've had stuff given to us at the late in the day, often the day of the meeting, and whether actually taking some of the major ones more slowly would actually be quite useful. Because I do also think that, as you say, we're in this situation now where we're told we haven't got the 5-year, you know, housing thing. We're told the plan is late. So there is a lot of pressure to agree to, and I usually, you know, I'm not against it, you know, obviously I would put the houses everywhere, but if it does seem to me that developers are queuing up to build houses, it's probably unlikely that we're not going to have our housing requirement, but we may be agreeing to things which aren't as good as things that would come later. So I just think obviously delay is not a policy, but doing things as absolutely rapidly as you can in big applications doesn't necessarily seem to me to be a good thing, or entirely good.
If I may, Chair, so the emphasis is never to rush major applications. There is a balance there. It's about ticking all the right boxes at the right time. We do have the overhanging statutory timescales that we need to try and adhere to as best we can. Sometimes we hit that, sometimes we don't, and we try and take an average across the year. There is a lot of negotiation that goes on with major applications, but when we formed LWM planning, we focused a lot on that pre-application process. So by the time you see a lot of those applications, it's already gone through the mill of being tested before it ends up in the public realm. And we've been very successful in encouraging those pre-applications to come in, where before I started, we didn't actually have very many pre-applications because there wasn't any faith in delivering those pre-applications. Some would get stuck in the system for a very long time. So people would just decide and just put in an application. So there is more confidence in that. So I think I said to the chair and vice chair of planning committee recently that every report that comes through to you at planning committee has gone through quite a rigid process and doesn't get published unless I've personally seen it and signed it off. So that hopefully gives members some confidence in what's being put in front of you as well. But the emphasis isn't on speed, about doing the right thing, but we are, as I said, we're mindful of that statutory timescale.
We still do get things at the last minute. I mean, it might be
members getting the information. Yeah,
might be the 15th, draft of it, but it's still.
Do you mean like the supplementary?
Yeah.
For the members, how long do you have to read? I mean, they're quite long supplementary. Sometimes I've seen on the major application.
Yeah.
What kind of
So when I started, the supplementary reports used to get published at 4 p.m, 2 hours before planning committee started, and I changed that so it got published on the Friday before, so that members would have the weekend. There has been a couple of occasions where something hasn't gone quite right, and you will have had a very last minute supplementary report, and we do try to avoid that as much as we can. It's just the way it goes occasionally, and if you want to see supplementaries even earlier, then obviously that is something we can take away and have a look at. Maybe we could try and push that to get published maybe for Thursday or Wednesday, and say right, no more after that. It is sometimes often down to the chair's discretion, because sometimes we'll say we've had this last minute bit of information come in. Are we able to share that or not? And then that is down to the chair as well to determine whether we can or not.
And can just have to wait until that particular time and then publish a supplementary, or do you get, if you could get the get the information for the supplementary early, you could send that out earlier? And do you have a time you think, well, that's the time, that's when we send it out? Or could you sometimes send it out early because you've had that information earlier?
We try and kind of mop everything up in one go, so that we don't end up, I suppose you don't want to see 2 or 3 different supplementary reports on 2 or 3 different cases.
It's a very long thing. The earlier you get it, that's all. I mean, just leave it out there for you to consider. It's complicated. I appreciate that.
I don't know if I'm going to help at all. I guess I was going to say, from my perspective, 25 years in local government, that's not a new phenomenon. That planning is that's the nature of planning, isn't it? So an applicant is going to throw the kitchen sink, everything they possibly can, to create the strongest possible application right up until the last minute, which I think is what we're seeing. Yeah. But as soon as the information is available, the officers are not sitting on it. They're sharing what is available with planning committee.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Bragger, please.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if this was discussed in a previous meeting that before I was on the committee, but the issue about householders getting letters or putting the notices up, I absolutely understand that the officer's time is better spent putting a few notices up. I just wondered how the decision was made when letters are sent out, because I can think of lots of examples, and I think it actually for that person, if the planning's affecting them, that they should have a letter. So could you clarify what sort of things would mean you'd send letters out, and which would you say no, but putting the notice up is enough?
So where there is a particular history on a site, for example, if it's quite controversial or contentious, then we might take the decision to send letters out. If there is a site that where we've had a lot of neighbours or public sort of write in, or there's been something in the press, for example, then we might take that decision to write to particular neighbours. Sometimes somebody might see the notice and say, please could you write to us, because I'm representing a member of the family and they can't get out and see the notice, can we have the letter? Then those instances that we will write to them. It's not a blanket, we don't write to anybody, it's just a general rule, but we take every case individually, and we make that decision. And it's partly to try and, it doesn't speed up the process, I have to say, because you still have to allow that full 21-day initial consultation period to run out before we can even determine an application. So it doesn't speed up that decision-making process.
I'm going to say, well, what is the point of it then? I thought it was that the officer's time would be better used rather than delivering these. What are the point is there for not sending letters?
So one, it was a cost saving exercise as well, because on average it could cost the council something like £25,000 plus a year to send out letters. So it does save the council money in that sense. Also, it saves officer time in terms of validating the applications, that they don't have to sit and identify who they need to consult with neighbours. Very occasionally, the system might not flag a particular neighbour and it gets missed, and then that could pose problems as well. So by increasing these very brightly coloured notices, they're very hard to miss.
You need planning permission for that.
No, we don't. They're temporary. Well, they're supposed to be. So so that's more visual, that's more visible, and then there's a QR code on those that people can then go straight to the website and have a look at those applications.
That's it. Before I bring Councillor Ray in, that first suggested, and we had in our own ward an application. This is the street the house was on, but I knew that the people at the back of the house, at the end of the garden, they're the ones that'd be most affected. That's where the development was. You go around there, little cul-de-sac, and I'm pleased to say there was a laminated, very brightly coloured letter there. And so I've not had heard any complaints about it. So I'm surprised it has worked. I know sometimes you can get a neighbour's missed out, or anybody's involved in elections knows, oh, I never had a leaflet, so they never had a letter, they just somebody's binned it before they even opened it. So it seems to have worked that. So yeah, we had this discussion, as I said previously.
Yeah, if I can add, as part of the trial, we have been monitoring any feedback from doing this and not sending letters out. If anybody at any time had said this isn't working, or if we had a volume of complaints about it, then obviously we would rethink this. But actually, we haven't. So hopefully, touch wood, it's working.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Ray.
Yeah. So 2 points. For one, sort of been answered really in that discussion, because I was just interested in with the notices point and the letters point, tracking it back to the previous item we were talking about complaints, whether that's led to any complaints. But from what you were saying, Artemis, it hasn't really, because I guess I might have thought that residents would have said, I never knew this was happening next door to my house, and but you haven't been getting that sort of response. And then just getting back to the appeals, firstly, well done. The stats here are very impressive, and good luck for your dinner that's coming up. But I was interested in what you're saying about the permissive regime that the government's introducing into the planning inspectorate. Does that lead to to more training for your team, so you're picking up trends? So just interested to understand what those trends might be and how they get sort of devolved and trained down to your team.
So part of my role, so I sit on a lot of roundtables, official roundtables. So I sit and consult with MHCLG, the Local Government Advisory Service, Planning Advisory Service, Planning Officers Society, UK SPD, and as part of this kind of network that I have, people are always sharing information and knowledge, and then I kind of cascade that down to the team. So, and obviously we try to keep on top of the latest planning news, because there is always something in the news about planning and legislation changing. So we try to keep on top of those trends as much as we can, to keep everybody informed, and we monitor national appeals as well. So if there is a significant case somewhere that might impact some of the decision making that we do, we try and take that on board as well.
And are there any particular trends, density or whatever it might be, that's where the planning inspector is being more permissive, and presumably the developers are all over this as well. They know how how much they can push, or they need to push to their benefit.
Yeah, I mean, if you take houses, so obviously the government at the moment is saying they want to build 1.5 million houses in the next 5 years. So that is their number one thing, build, and that's one of the reasons why they introduced the grey belt, to free up some of our kind of lesser value green belt sites to allow for this to happen. They are looking for increased densities. They are saying go higher if you need to go higher, where you can go higher as well. Place shaping is a big thing, but yeah, they are just saying build wherever you can build, basically. That's the general kind of, I'm paraphrasing here, but that's kind of their feel.
So just with the grey belts, is there guidance already issued now?
Or? There is guidance, isn't there?
There is some guidance, and we have nationally started to see 1 or 2 appeal decisions starting to come through.
The key is that the appeals, how that's worked.
Yeah, because it gives that sort of government steer as to how they're interpreting that grey belt policy. It isn't quite fixed yet, because with the new legislation, the bill that's going to come out, I think that will yield a bit more information. I was at the National Planning Conference a few weeks ago, and somebody mentioned, so what are you doing about grey belt? And everybody in the room, I'm talking about chief planners from across the UK, they said, don't talk to us about grey belt, we don't know. Which is a bit of a joke, but people generally are quite nervous about how to interpret grey belt. So all you can do is take it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm just got one more question, perhaps, really, which is that you're working with major developers and you spend some time with them, major developments rather. And how does that work? Because you're helping them, I say helping them, helping them to put their best case forward for an application, presumably. And what they need, well, no, I'm trying to get the right wording, I'm sorry about this, is to, explain what the hurdles are and what they need to do to fit in with the planning. So how does that make it difficult at the later stage then, when you're also judging the application, because you've helped? You understand what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm almost questioning professionalism. I'm not doing that, but I do find that a bit awkward. I mean, as a councillor, I've done the best case forward for an application, even though that application go through, and it's really annoying if it does go through. I've been given the advice on what to do, but you know.
So, let's say you've got a development and they put in a pre-application, so they'll submit a suite of documents. We assess that in the normal way, but it's not done in the public realm. No. So, but we still consult internally and externally on that. So we collate those views, we provide our initial assessment, and we give them an opinion on that. It's not always, well, if you did this and did that, then you will get permission. We never guarantee permission. We give them an informed opinion. Yes. Sometimes this is an absolute non-starter. It's not going to go anywhere. Go away, come back and do another pre-app. Sometimes it's, we can work with them to tweak a few things here and there to get to somewhere where it might tick all the boxes in terms of local and national policy. But it's something there that we could take forward, but we never guarantee them anything, because once it hits that public realm and it becomes a public document, when the main application comes in, then there are lots of other factors that are then get taken into account, like member and public perception as well.
And do in the pre-app process, we'll call it, are statutory bodies consulted at all? I mean, highways, there must be discussions there, but are there others as well?
Yes, so we, depending on what the development is, we will not only consult highways, but we might consult Sport England, Environment Agency, Natural England, the local lead flood authority. It's a whole national highways as well. So there's a whole suite of, you know, relevant people that we would consult that would feed into the pre-applications as well.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Hill.
Just a question that if an application is put forward to you and a resident says, well, we have some concerns about the age of the drainage system, we don't feel that it's capable of supporting that level, how much time and effort or whatever do you do in exploring the validity of whatever that claim is?
So okay, so we would consult the local lead flood authority, and obviously they're the experts in those fields, so we would take their advice on board. However, so that would border on what we would call the building control, the building regulations side, the detail. So planning looks at the holistic overview of an application, of a proposal. And then once it passes that hurdle, they then get into the nitty gritty of the detail of construction and build. So then more plans are then drawn, details of foundations and drainage and things like that, that then have to pass building regulations, and usually details of drainage and capacity within existing sewage systems is done by building control, which is separate to planning.
So you're saying that they've already had the planning approved and then it goes to control, but then they could find that there is a problem.
If there is a problem at that stage, then it would be stopped. They won't get their certificates for building regulations if they can't satisfy the building inspector. So they would have to try and revise the scheme. And sometimes if it means a revision to what was approved at planning, then it has to start again. Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate answering questions almost, I would say almost, not quite, over and above the report, and the success that is clear there, I think, for people seeing the performance of the planning authority. We all wish you well, and Councillor Ray referred to it, November the 27th. He wants to come in again now, so I'll let you.
Yes, just go back to appeals, because I imagine that takes a lot of officer time if you're having to prepare for appeal. If we win the appeal, do we as a council, can we recover our costs? And if we don't, or is there a policy that might need to be tightened, maybe to discourage people making frivolous appeals?
So we can't stop people from appealing, but we can also apply for costs as well, which the inspector would look at. And again, now, as it's more the norm since I started almost 3 years ago, that we automatically apply for costs. Whether we get it or not is another matter, but if we don't try, we'll never know. So I've said to officers that put an application in and see what happens, even if it's just a cost recovery and we just get something is better than nothing, because as you're right, there is a lot of officer time that goes into appeals, and it's kind of that hidden workload of planners that isn't always highlighted.
You have to give reasons why you're asking for costs in there.
Yes, usually around cost recovery of officer time spent on processing an application. That's usually the main reasons for that.
Yeah, somebody the whole subject, look into that elsewhere on appeals. That's not fair to ask you more questions on that one. So if there are no other questions, we find it just interesting. I appreciate the success that you've got so far. And, yeah, well done. I think it's okay to say scrutiny chair. I don't normally say that, but I think well done is
yes. Record that as well, please, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time as well. Thanks. Item, the work programme. So if we go to the work programme then please, ask Will to go through this if that's okay.
Yeah, there is not much change from previous iterations, Chair. It's the last meeting that we've got in 2025. So just looking ahead into next year, at the next meeting, we've got a report on leisure services performance, medium-term financial strategy, and the Young Voices event. Going ahead to March, we've then got the LWM business plan annual accounts and the annual review of overview and scrutiny that we do each year. So it's over to members to.
Yeah, well, you made a mistake. You see, you mentioned the Young Voices event, and there's somebody here that's managed to get through security. He's over 21. It's Councillor Colin Ball, and he's got a question.
Yes, Chair, I've got a couple of questions on the work programme. One to do with the Young Voices, which I'll come to second. But first, the empty homes and housing and homelessness strategy. About 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, we had a very extensive discussion here for 40 minutes or more about empty homes. It says here that it's now integrated with housing and homelessness strategy. I looked through that housing and homeless delivery plan, which is very good. I made some comments and suggestions for improving it because the table was not clear in a couple of areas towards the right-hand side where it said this will become business as usual, and there's a lot of not applicable down there, which didn't make sense to me because you're either going to make it business as usual as you're not. And Lizzie Barton has responded very positively to me on those comments and made those changes. I'm grateful it was sent out beforehand. I've also asked that it includes in reviewing the performance of landlords, that we specifically mentioned social landlords, because I mentioned earlier the dreaded word Bromford. I'll say it again now, whose performance is appalling and makes me feel ashamed to have spent 40 years of my life working in social rented housing with housing associations. You know, and I'll be coming back to that in another context quite hard. But empty homes doesn't really feature in that delivery plan, and we spent a good 45 minutes here discussing it, making some suggestions about compulsory purchase orders and other stuff. And I'm hoping at some point we can revisit that. I mean, James Johnson, who sadly is now leaving for understandable reasons because he's got a great job opportunity elsewhere, was really tip top on that and was pushing it very hard. And I'm just concerned that that may now go on the back burner. And I think it's a very key issue. There are lots of empty properties across the district that we need to be applying a much more rigorous approach to get them back into use.
Okay.
So that's something I think we need to just record. When we come to Young Voices, I might be jumping the gun because it's going to come before us soon, but I like to get my comments in early. I want to commend the staff team, Will, Fiona, Kerry, and all the others who were there. I as Councillor Norman says, I managed to sneak through security on the basis that it was in my ward. And I think it was a fantastic event. The young people there would have got a lot out of it, and they came up with there was a panel in the afternoon with our 2 local MPs and our youngest district councillor, who had a nice badge that said youngest English councillor. I refrained from complaining I didn't want saying oldest district councillor, because that sadly wouldn't be true. There are 2 or 3 maybe who are a bit older than me, but not many. But I think it was a great event. What worried me about it was the strategic political. We even had a member of staff come in on their day off to see how it had gone. So I think the staff team did an absolutely sterling job and really made it great for the young people. And the young people made some very good points to that panel. So I think it was excellent. What was disappointing is there were 18 young people there in the morning and 14 in the afternoon. And we had more members of staff there than we had young people. And I was concerned about that in terms of the cost of that to the council, and our staff team could have been doing other things. And I think that's the political decision rather than the staff team about pushing ahead with it very quickly without very good publicity. And it would be much better, I think, to hold fire on it, get more publicity out there, get more young people involved and make it more successful. While I'm speaking, I did mention at full council our minutes the last meeting, and the chair said it was because he's old fashioned and caring, and he said that criticism at the last meeting had been rather regretful or something like that. I thought it was, we had a very robust and angry response to the way that the cabinet member had handled the whole youth engagement process. And I just want to get that on the record, please, because I think we need to keep building on what we did. But I think we need to find ways that there were 4 or 5 young people outside playing on the football pitch outside. I tried to encourage them in. I got on the temptation of pizza, which was provided at lunchtime. Jordan, who does a fantastic job along with these colleagues at Simon and others at Active Lichfield, tried to bring them in. So I'm not sure we're getting the right people in to this either, in terms of how we structure it and make it accessible to them. But I think a great event for those who are there, but I think the political decision was wrong to rush ahead with it quickly without good publicity. It could have been much more successful with more young people there who would have benefited greatly from it.
Okay, okay. We have the report in January, and I don't think you want to come back on anything, do you? What do you?
Can say that
Anything about the cuisine, the menu? That seems to have been a deterrent rather than a.
Yeah, the pizza was great.
You're quite right. Yes, there is a report coming to committee in January. At our pre-meeting, you may recall, you also requested if we can have a briefing paper before that.
Yeah, yeah.
The briefing paper will be very similar to the report because there won't be any new information that comes to light between December and January. But it's just so members have that information beforehand and then can actually delve into it in January in the meeting.
Yeah, so that's your Christmas Day ruined. Okay. Thank you. The other issue was
Yes.
fair enough, but the task groups, the transport task group, where
Yes.
we need to get on with it. I did suggest we get something. Oh, Paul, Councillor Ray.
Yeah. Thank you. I was just asking about the transport task group because I know there's something that the committee's been eager to set up before. I think you've got councillors who have volunteered.
Yeah, we've got.
So I'm just eager that because we talked about
quite right.
buses and we talked about train links. And certainly the bus connection is very important in this district where we've got rural communities and sort of 2 centres which we need to connect. So just get that.
You want to get on with it. Quite right. Yeah, I mean that's what we'll do. I presume we could. You probably don't want a meeting in December. Do you think January be okay? We'll get a lot of information before then, or do you want December? Do you think we'll risk it December?
Our sort of January be all right.
In terms of collating the information, put it together, get everyone can work.
It's something that we can actually make some add something to it, and actually makes use it actually worthwhile. That's what I want to do. Really. But all keep talking about the cinema. There's no buses to get to it or back from it in Birdwood. So these are the all the bits that we're looking at. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Councillor Ray. That's it as far as I can see. I thank everybody for attending and get me digestive biscuits back unless somebody has opened them. And I wish you a Merry Christmas. I don't want to. For obvious reason, not because I don't want you to have a Merry Christmas. But that's it. Thank you. Meeting's over. Thank you.